Greetings, beloved Princeton United Methodist Church community. It's Pastor Jenny here, and I have a word from Scripture for you. I'm reading from 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16 today. So we do not lose heart. Even though our outer nature is wasting away, our inner nature is being renewed day by day. This is the word of life. Thanks be to God. So we're continuing to talk about our powerful purpose, both that general one that reminds us, that claims us as God's beloved children, that tells us that our purpose is to live as God's children, as God's beloved, to see others as God's beloved children as well, to love and serve God, to love and serve others. We are all called to that purpose. But there are also ways that we are particularly, uniquely called, uniquely gifted. And I'd like to share with you again, I've shared this with you before, but I think it's worth hearing again today, Frederick Buechner's take on vocation. And remember, when we're talking about purpose and vocation and calling, we're talking really about the same thing. So this is just a portion of what Frederick Buechner says. He says, there are all different kinds of voices calling you to all different kinds of work. And the problem is to find out which is the voice of God rather than of society, say, or the superego, or the self-interest. By and large, a good rule for finding out is this: the kind of work God usually calls you to is the kind of work, A, that you most need to do, and B, that the world most needs to have done. As we think about the particularity of our powerful purpose, I want us to keep paying attention to that voice that is the voice of God. And sometimes that's external, but part of it is internal, right? God speaks to us through our souls and through the ways that we are created to be. And so as we prepare for worship this week, as we go through this week, I invite you to keep paying attention to really what brings you to life. What sparks something in you and goes, oh, this is it. This is the kind of thing that just brings my soul to life. And so in that 2 Corinthians passage, when it's talking about how we are being renewed day by day, what is it that's renewing you day after day, or at least those days that you would find that thing that is bringing you to life? It may be more than one thing. That's all fine. But what are those things that bring you to life? But the second part of this is not just what brings you to life, but who else is it bringing to life as well? So remember how Buechner talked about it being something that we most need to do and something the world most needs to have done. Both pieces are important. And if we focus on one to the exclusion of the other, we are missing something crucial about our calling, about our powerful purpose. So what brings you to life? What brings you to life? And of those things that bring you to life, what are those things that also bring other people to life when you are engaged in those things? So take a look, take a thought, take a moment in prayer and journaling, art, whatever it is that helps you to dive into some of these questions. I commend that to you today. So remember that we are back in person again. For those of you who want to be, we'll always be online, but these are some of the things that you are invited to. You can come back in person to some things. I promised you last week that I would talk a little bit about the Kingston Partnership that we have. There are a couple things that I want to mention and point you toward. So we are also in conversation with our district superintendent with some other churches that may or may not be wanting to collaborate in this way as well. That does not mean that they would all just come in at once. The way things happened with Kingston was quick and it was not ideal in a lot of ways, but there were some things that necessitated that that just made it so. So we're also trying to learn a lot from that. We learned a lot in the last 6 months, 7 months now, about what went well and what didn't go well and how we might do it differently in the future. So we're in some conversation about that. And that doesn't mean that those churches would again, jump in or say yes right now. It would more mean that it's a yes to continue conversation. So after we finish some of those conversations, those initial conversations, we will be with Kingston, some people from Princeton, and possibly from one or more of those churches, gathering together over the next few months to start really looking at what governance structure looks like, what financial structures look like, what all these things look like to really develop a strong and robust multi-site ministry. There are a lot more questions around all of that than there are answers, though more and more our answers kind of emerging. And as we find our way through some of this, I would love to hear from you any ways that you have been impacted by the multi-site ministry, for good, for ill, for question. Maybe it's just because you've been unsure and that weighs on you. That would be helpful to know as well. But I'd love to hear kind of what it feels like from where you are sitting. I also want to point you to something that we're doing for Lent. So during Lent, we're going to have some pieces of some pieces of our Lent practice that are also collaborative. So for Ash Wednesday, which is still a month away, but it's coming quickly, we are going to have a joint service at the Kingston campus. So you'll still have an online opportunity for that, but there will also be an in-person one, but it will be at Kingston. For Holy Thursday, we're going to swap that. Kingston will be invited to come to the Princeton campus for that. There will be lots of things that are just still at the Princeton campus, but there are a couple of things like that will be more collaborative. We are inviting everybody to come to our Tuesday gatherings to study the book together that we're going to be looking at. Well, both campuses will be engaged in the same worship series. We're going to have a workshop with prayer beads that's going to be offered with both campuses in mind as well. So there are a lot of things that we're going to try to do together that hopefully we'll be able to feel a little bit more of that connection through Lent and in some of the months to come. So that's the update for that for the moment, and I invite you to ask questions and share your responses. All of that is welcome. All right, friends, I'm so delighted to be on this journey with you. Remember that you are God's beloved. You are enough because God is enough. Thanks be to God for that.